Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Christina Reynolds. I'm the Vice President of Communications here at Emily's List, formerly the Deputy Communications Director at Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Director of Media Affairs in the Obama White House.
And I'm Ben Dotson. I'm the Vice President of Digital here at Emily's List. I got my start in state and local campaigns, primarily in Michigan, and then joined the Obama administration, worked in consulting for a while, and I've been here for about 2 years.
We are really excited to be talking to you today about delivering your campaign message. Before we get started, which we'll do shortly, we just wanted to learn more about who is with us tonight. So please press 1 if you're dialed in from the Northeast, 2 if you're like me from the South, 3 if you're from the Midwest, 4 if you're from the Southwest, 5 from the Northwest, 3 from the Midwest, 4 from the Southwest, 5 from the Northwest, and 6 if I haven't listed your geographical location. Also, we'd love to know more about what you're running for, so please press 1 if you're running for school board, press 2 if you're running for a municipal or county position, press 3 if you're running for state house or state senate, and press 4 if you're running for a federal office like Congress.
So here's what we'll be covering tonight in our short time together. We're going to get started with a message recap. Then Christina's going to talk about earned media, and we'll pause after that for some questions about the material we've covered. Then we'll move on to spreading your message online, which I'll be talking about, and then we'll pause again for questions afterwards. So again, you'll have 2 moments during which you can ask questions as we go through the materials.
Great, thanks, Ben. We know that some of you have been with us before, but for some of you, this may be your first webinar. So before we dive in, we'd love to tell you just a little bit more about who Emily's List is. We are, quite simply, the largest resource for women in politics. We have helped elect pro-choice Democratic women for more than 30 years now, including 116 women to the House of Representatives, 23 women to the Senate, 12 governors, more than 800 women to state and local office. That's over 1,000 if you add them all up. And we have more than 34,000 women, many of you, who have signed up to join Run to Win, to raise their hand and run for office. So if you're one of those 34,000 women, we really want to say thank you. We are so grateful that you're raising your hand and running for office. We need you, Emily's List needs you, and our country needs more pro-choice Democratic women like you at every level.
All right, so we're going to get started by setting up some sort of norms for the conversation tonight. So thanks again for joining us. First, let's invest in our time together. We'll take questions at 2 points, in the middle and at the end. All questions are valid. We're willing to answer anything you want to throw at us. Type them in the text box, and one of our folks here will get them to us when we get to the appropriate moment. And finally, slides are internal. Respect the community that we're building here, and enjoy.
Great. Thanks, Ben. So we're going to go through a little message recap. The most important thing to remember about your message is it is vital to your campaign. Every single interaction, no matter who it is, who it's with, rather, is an opportunity to share your message with voters. So every time you're talking to someone, every time you're telling them something about your campaign, you are delivering a message. So let's talk about what a message is. For many of you who've been through other trainings, you've probably done a message box. You've worked with the training to build your message, but we'll do just a quick summary just to run you through it. An effective and winning message is an effective and winning succinct sentence. That means short. I'm running because X. We're not going to fill that in for you. You all have your own personal stories to tell, but this is fundamentally what a message is. It focuses on the race and how you're different from your opponent. So again, you're telling your own story and talking about yourself. It's also values-based. It should be short, something that can resonate with voters and is informed by your listening tour. So the people that you're talking to, the most effective messages speak to something that the district is looking for. And then it takes into account if you've been able to do research and polling from your race, your message should take that into account. So you package all those things up, and that tells the story of why you're running and what you're going to do for the voters in your district. That's your message. That message should work all the way through your campaign. So just to give you a sense, these are some examples of spreading the same message through earned, paid, and digital media. You can see here, this is Elizabeth Warren saying the middle class has been chipped, squeezed, and hammered. And if you can read that slide in the middle, that's a website from her, I believe a Facebook post, where she says the same thing. She's driving the same message throughout. This is even a web ad or potentially a mail piece where she, again, she's talking about how she's different than her opponents, how she and Barack Obama are going to deliver tax cuts for those middle-class families that are squeezed. This is one through line all the way through your communications, and that's really important. We call it message discipline. Really, it means saying the same thing to your different audiences. So we talk about message, but we also want to talk about what tactics you use to spread your message. As we mentioned, any communication with a voter, any communication with anyone is spreading your message. So you want to make sure that you are saying the same thing and doing the same thing. We're going to talk about two of those tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about earned media. Ben's going to talk about digital and a little bit on paid and how you deliver that message. So let's start off with earned media. Fundamentally, that's the press. It's earned media because you have to work for it. The press will make you work. Here's one of our candidates doing just that. Let's talk about how to build a plan. So the first step in any plan is to know who you want to reach. So in the case of building a media outreach plan, you need to build a press list. That's who to contact and how you get in touch with them. There are a few ways to do that. Number one is to reach out to your state party and ask if they have a press list that you can use for your district. Another is to reach out if you know candidates who've run in other races. They may have some other ideas or some press lists for you. The other way is just to figure out who's following your race and to get in touch with them. Take a look at how to contact them on their Twitter pages, on their Twitter bios rather, on their websites, things like that. You also, there are services that can do this. They can be expensive, so you may just want to keep an eye out and try some of those free methods first. Establish a relationship with reporters. This helps you do the other thing on this list, which is prioritize those media outlets. As you talk to voters, get a sense of what they're listening to, what they're reading, how they get their news. You live in the district, you know how you do it. Hopefully, as you're talking to your family and friends, you're figuring that out as well. So figure out which media outlets are the ones most likely to cover you and the ones that people are most likely to get their information from. You also want to, in doing so, you want to establish relationships with those reporters. I'm here to tell you reporters are people too. So go reach out to them, see if you can grab coffee and talk to them about why you're running and why it's important. They're busy people, but they're also always looking for interesting stories and stories that can connect with their readers or viewers or listeners, depending on what kind of media. That it's important to remember as you reach out to those reporters to be careful with those conversations and make sure that anything that you say to a reporter you'd be comfortable hearing in a different outlet. We have a number of tools that we mentioned here, a number of ways to reach out to reporters. Building a personal relationship is important if you can do it, but that can be difficult to reach everyone. And you also want to be reaching out to news directors and assignment producers and things like that. So in order to do that, we use a number of different tools. That includes news releases. That's when you have news, you release it. It's very simple. It's pushing out when you have comments about things that have happened, when you want to offer a plan on something, when you want to talk about something and you want to reach a broad audience, news releases are one way to do it. Media advisories are, generally speaking, inviting reporters to events. We'll talk about events in a minute, but they just advise the media of what's coming. That's less of announcing news and more of telling them where you'll be. Press conferences are another way to reach reporters. Keep in mind, at a press conference, a reporter can ask you anything. So make sure that you're well prepped. And social media, and Ben's going to talk some about reaching reporters on social media, but it's important to remember reporters now are definitely on, particularly Twitter, but they're on social media. It's a good way to find out what they're covering and what they're interested in. And you should be following them and they'll be following you. So pay attention to what you're putting out there. That is a form of reaching the press. Setting up an event is an important thing. So one thing that we want to think about as you set up an event, one is what you're going to talk about. That's obviously the most important thing. Are you making news? Are you announcing something? What are you saying? But the visual is important. If you're doing an event rather than a press release, then you want to get that picture. So what's the picture behind you? Is it a room full of kids if you're announcing an education plan? Is it a group of people supporting you? You want that to look engaged and interesting. You want to give reporters, particularly TV reporters, something interesting to look at. You also want to make sure there's nothing embarrassing in the shot behind you. That has happened. Many a politician has taken a picture or done an event in front of something where there was a poster in the background they didn't notice, or things like that. So keep an eye out for that. You also want to check how the audio is in the room. If you're doing an event and a reporter shows up, the last thing you want is that they can't actually hear you, or that they can't get good audio for shooting if they're a TV crew or a radio crew. So you need to make sure that they'll be able to hear you and that you have the AV equipment necessary if you have cameras coming. You also want to make sure, obviously, the crowd can hear you. If you're speaking to voters, they need to be able to hear you. So taking up all those things into account before you do the event is important, so you're not scrambling at the last minute. We also talk about do you have signs in the shots? Do you want supporters? As I just mentioned, making sure that it's a good and interesting shot is important. If you have supporters, make sure they're awake and engaged and ready to go and look excited. And then make sure, if you've done all this work to set up the event, make sure that you can also post it on your social media, put it on your website. So get a staff member or a volunteer to take pictures of you engaged in the event. You've done all this work, get all the credit for it.
Right. And one of the other things that I would add is that as you're preparing for events, think about all of the tools you have in your toolbox to promote that event before, during, and after. Press releases, media advisories. On the digital side, what are you doing on social media to build the event? What are you doing live during the event? What are you doing after? And making sure that you have appropriate staffing or assigning, whether it's volunteers or staff, to get that done. But again, this goes back to the importance of calendaring this out and actually having a sort of plan as you go into this, so you're set up for success from the beginning.
The other important thing for an event, we talked about setting it up, making it look good, calendaring it. Fundamentally, you need to know what you want to say. As you go into, we'll talk about interviews in a minute, but as you go into any sort of event or an interview, you need to know what you would want the ideal headline to be if someone came to cover it. You don't get to control the headlines, but you're never going to get the one you want if you're not aiming specifically for it. And so thinking through, what's the one quote I want someone to take out of this? What's the one headline? What's the one thing that I would want covered? Often helps make sure that you are drilling down more specifically into that topic. So it's an important thing with an event. It's also an important thing for an interview. So again, if you go into an interview, the first thing to remember in an interview is that you have to decide first that you want to do the interview. Either you've pitched it or someone has asked you for an interview, and you need to first make sure that you want to do it, that it is a positive thing. As a general rule, press is good. If you have a reporter wanting to cover you, that gives you, again, some of this earned media that can help validate you with voters. But if you don't have anything to say, if you think that the risks are greater than the rewards, then that's something you should really think through. You also need to know, going in, what you want that headline to be. And so thinking through that and thinking through your message is a really important thing. The other thing to think about, there are two things when you prep for an interview, and the first is you have to prep for an interview. Prep is incredibly important. If you schedule the interview but you have no time for prep, you have done yourself a serious disservice, and you should think twice about that. So make sure you have time for prep. Make sure you have time to take a look at what that reporter has said recently on Twitter, at what they've covered recently. You've done your prep on the reporter themselves. But I think also thinking through, what the toughest questions are, what are the ones that you're most worried about, thinking through those and thinking through how you would answer will make you feel more confident as you walk into that interview, will make you think through what those pitfalls are. So hopefully you don't step in them, and will make you, and that'll show as you do the interview. The other thing is, generally speaking, as you do an interview, you know probably what the first question will be. If it's an introductory interview, then it's probably, why are you running for this office? If it's about a policy rollout that you're doing, then it's probably, why does this issue matter to you? Or tell me how this policy would matter to voters. In those cases, if you know what that first question is, think through what your answer is and practice saying it out loud. Ideally, you'd have someone who can bounce those questions off you. But if you don't, that's okay. Literally do it in a mirror. Do it in the car on the way over to the interview, but say it out loud. Hear yourself say it. Try and say it a couple of times. The goal is not to sound overly rehearsed, but you're always better if you practice some. So make sure you built in that time and really thought that through. The other thing is, you're going to get an interview where you're going to get some tough questions. And we have Ross here pivoting. That is an important thing. When you get in a sticky situation, you need to think through, obviously, you've practiced, you've thought through your tough questions, you've thought through your answers. But if you continue to pressure, one of the things to do there is to pivot. So is to put in little verbal cues that let the reporter know, I am shifting a bit and I am showing you what's really important. How do you do that? One is these verbal cues that we've listed here are a really good way to do it. So it's a question you don't really want to spend a lot of time on. You answer a little bit of that and then you say, but you know, what's really important is, or what I can tell you about this is, or here's the real issue. And that verbal cue works to flag for the reporter and for the listener that you're telling them something important. Literally, when you tell people this is what's important, they remember that it's important, and it helps to shift the answer. I like to remind people that they control the questions, you control the answers. No one can actually force you to say something, unless you're doing an interview under duress, which I would not recommend doing. No one can force you to say something that you don't want to say. So you control the answers. So when they ask the question, answer what you want to answer. Answer the question that you were hoping for and not necessarily exactly what was asked, or answer the question asked and move on to the answer that you'd like to talk about, or the topic that you'd like to talk about. And you can do some of that with the pivot. We're not suggesting that you sound like a typical politician, that you try and obviously obfuscate, but I think it's important to remember that your answers are your time. So give them the time that you want on the issues that you want. And then with that, I think we're going to shift over to some questions. Again, there'll be a second question and answer period at the end here, but if there are any questions now, we're happy to take them.
Hi all, we've had some great questions come in. I'll go over a few of them right now. The first one is, can you explain the difference between paid and earned media? What are the pros and cons of both?
Sure. Just give us 1 minute. Sorry, guys.
Christina and Ben?
Yes.
Great. We've got a few questions that have come in.
Great.
And our first, can you explain the difference between paid and earned media? What are the pros and cons of both?
Sure. Well, the easiest answer to that is that earned is free, and paid is something that you pay for. So paid media can come in a number of forms. Ben will talk about some of the digital forms of that. Paid media also is the TV ads that you see, mail pieces, other paid digital content. Earned media is where you go out and earn, it's also called free media, although we like to say it's not free in sweat equity, but that's where you go out and get get coverage from reporters. Generally speaking, you control all of the message with paid media. You don't control all of it with earned media because a reporter gets to write what they want. The one exception there is if you draft things like op-eds or letters to the editor. But as a general rule, paid media is completely under your control. It's a good idea. It's also, you can in different ways target the people who are seeing it, whereas with earned media, you're relying on the target of the outlet that you're being covered in. So the benefit to one is that it's free. The benefit to the and provides some validation. Sometimes people like seeing, I saw this candidate on my local TV news, and that, they seem like a real candidate. They seem like someone I'd like to follow. A TV ad or a digital ad is obviously, people understand that you're paying for that. So, but it's all your message. You control it, and you often control the voters that see it because you can target it towards them. Am I missing anything there?
No, I think I got it.
Great.
Great. Our next question. As a voter, I'm often frustrated by candidates who dodge questions, but now that I'm running for office myself, I find myself in that situation. Do you have any suggestions for the pivot so that I don't sound like I'm dodging the question?
Sure. I mean, one way to do it is to answer the question in a short fashion so that you have actually answered the question, but then to move on to the topic that you'd rather address or the issue that you find more important. So if I were to ask Ben about earned media versus paid media, and he really wanted to talk about digital media, he could offer a very short, well, I think both are important, and then move on to what I really think is important is digital media, and let me tell you about that. In that sense, you haven't actually dodged the question, you just haven't given it as much time. So you can do something short like that. Other ways are to expand the scope of the question. So if someone asks you about a specific issue, to speak to the broadest part of that issue rather than, rely on the one specific piece. Excuse me. And then we just talked about some of those pivots, but really to spend less time and then move on to other topics are one way to do it. There are some people who would note, that candidates who are very open and very frank get credit for that. You just need to make sure that as you do that, that you're not, that you're really talking about the issues that brought you into the race and delivering and coming back to your message. So you don't have to let the media derail you from what you consider most important.
Great. And our last question in this Q&A series, folks should feel free to continue to type questions into the chat box throughout the webinar. But this last one, what can you do if a reporter will not get off an issue that is not on message and won't respond to your attempts to pivot?
I think you can, sometimes the only thing you can do is just say, I feel like I've answered this question. And, I would love to talk to you about some of my other priorities. Sometimes if a reporter really won't get off a topic, you just have to give the same answer. That's rare, I think. You see it sometimes, for example, when then Senator Obama was on his book tour in 2006, he went on Meet the Press, and I think that Tim Russert asked him 6 or 7 times if he was running for president, and he gave the same, I'm focused on the people of Illinois answer until finally Tim Russert moved on. But it's rare that a reporter will spend too much time on a topic. So I would say you give your answer. If they ask again, you give the same answer. And then if they ask a third time, to say, I think I've answered this, and I'm happy to come back to you with more information. But, what I'd love to talk about is this issue. That's sometimes the best you can do. You're not going to win over every reporter, and you're not going to win over every outlet. But sometimes the best you can do is to offer up your message, figure out which reporters you can win over, and spend a lot of time winning voters over. And I think Ben's going to talk about some of how you do that and offer your own message in a more unfiltered way through digital media.
Great, thanks.
Perfect. So now we're going to talk about how you spread your message online, whether through social media, through email, or what have you. And I think it's helpful to start this discussion really by asking yourself 3 basic questions. 1, what are your campaign goals? Are you trying to raise money? Are you trying to recruit volunteers? Are you trying to persuade voters? Because everything you do online should relate back to one of your political goals. Second, what's your plan, and have you written it down? A plan is a roadmap with benchmarks, and it's one way to hold yourself accountable. Plans can change, but they're simple, and they help give our efforts a direction. And then finally, who is accountable for digital? Someone should be assigned to write content, post updates, keep your website fresh. Who is that person? And it could be your campaign manager, it could be a digital director if you're on a really large race, or it could be a trusted volunteer, but someone has to be assigned to do these things, otherwise they won't get done. And finally, you should be using all these things. You should be using your digital platforms to connect with voters, volunteers, and donors.
And the press.
And the press. So we've talked a little bit about what digital takes. I also want to talk a little bit about what it offers. So digital offers money. That's the ability to raise the small dollar contributions that'll power your campaign. It offers message, the ability to get your message out to voters, potential voters, volunteers, and donors, and the press. And then finally, mobilization, the ability to turn out your supporters, whether that's to volunteer or vote or what have you. And I think it's important as we talk about what digital offers to specify that money is primarily going to come through email and through your website. It will primarily not come through social media. So let's talk about putting together your actual digital strategy. So I think good digital programs combine a mix of interesting planned content. That's content that you've prepared ahead of time, that you've scheduled and that you know it's coming. And then the ability to jump during big moments. You have an article drop that's a really great hit, or there's a development in the news that's important for you to respond to. Think about building out integrated campaigns. And what I mean by integrated campaigns are, say you have a message of the week. Think about how you're going to promote that on Facebook, on Twitter. Do you need to update your website? Are you doing a press release on it? And all of these things. So think about what you're doing across all of these different platforms every time you have something to announce or every time you're putting out an event. And then finally, make sure your program reflects the audiences you're talking to. And what I really mean here is, are you talking to voters, meaning people that need to be persuaded? Are you talking to volunteers, meaning people that are inclined to help you and they just need to be convinced of the value of what they're doing? Or are you talking to donors? These are the real converts and you need them to take it to the next level. So make sure that whatever you're talking about, however you're talking about it, and whatever tactic you're using are appropriate to the audience you're speaking to. So we spend a lot of time in digital talking about nice to haves. And I think that's where we naturally gravitate. But there are some musts that you have to have that every campaign needs in this day and age. Don't worry about being on every new social media platform, because again, keep in mind, every new platform you're on is a platform you have to maintain. It's another staffing need, or it's another volunteer need. These are the things you have to have. You have to have a website, because a website is where you collect donations. It is where you have basic information about yourself. It's the place that people can go to find out more about you.
Especially reporters.
Especially reporters.
Go to your website to check you out before they interview you.
Yep. And then you need an email list. You need a way to communicate with a group of your supporters, whether it's, again, to solicit them for contributions or ask them to take an action on your behalf. You need a way to collect donations. So that is a donation processing tool like ActBlue, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And finally, you need some basic social media accounts, especially Facebook and Twitter. We'll talk a little bit about what you use each of those two for in a minute. But just know that, again, be critical of each additional thing you want to take on, because as we always say, even though some of these things are free, they do cost something, whether it's people or time, or in fact money in some cases. So let's talk about your website. Your website introduces you and the things you care about to your voters. It should look professional. I think it's worth investing in having a good website design. Keep in mind your website is with you on day one of your campaign, and it is with you on the final day of your campaign. So you want it to be a good representation of who you are and what you stand for, and you want to make sure it's something that you can be proud of. You want to make sure that there's a prominent donate button right up at the top of your website. You don't want your supporters to have to guess what you want them to do. So make sure that the things you have on your homepage are the things you really want them focused on, whether it's following you on social media or signing up to volunteer, or again, donating, which in so many cases is an important measure of what we need to keep our campaigns running. And make sure, by the way, that if you have an email sign-up form on your website, that the sign-ups that are going into that email sign-up form are actually making it into whatever database you're using. Too often we see campaigns put up that form, they don't test it, and then they lose all of those signups. And there's this magical point right after you launch your campaign where you're able to capture a lot of enthusiasm. And you want to make sure you're set up to take advantage of that moment, and that the folks who are signing up to support you actually get followed up with as well. And this, the website example we provided here is from January Contreras, who's one of our candidates out in Arizona this cycle. And again, you don't have to guess what she wants you to do because she only provides you there with really 4 basic options. You can like her or follow her. You can join her campaign, which is a volunteer ask, or you can donate. And that is all the options that you get there. And so again, you don't have to guess what she needs you to do. So you should have a Facebook page for your campaign. On your Facebook page, don't just post press releases. If you get press coverage, use those articles and frame it in a way that is helpful for your campaign. Develop a graphic that complements it. Every post either needs to connect to either your voters, volunteers, or donors. Again, they should relate back to whatever your political strategy is. I think it's great to generate fear of missing out. This is where you cover live events, give behind the scenes.
Thank you for defining FOMO for those of us who might not have known. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. When you're having an event, by the way, you should do a Facebook event for it because it does automatic reminders to people. And so it's a great way, again, to make sure that as folks are showing interest in your campaign, that they're actually showing up, because it's half the battle is reminding them, I think. Share relevant campaign news on your Facebook. Provide compelling content that drives them to take some sort of action that can help you. Again, whether it's donating or volunteering. People love content. It doesn't all have to be live posting, but it's about creating a sense of community, allowing people to see themselves in your campaign and what you stand for. And finally, provide visuals. Visuals are so important, regardless of the social media platform we're talking about. Think about how you can incorporate photos. Have someone at your events assigned to take photos. Cell phone cameras are fine. But again, you want to make sure you're collecting that content so you have it when you need it. Twitter. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between Facebook and Twitter to start. So Facebook is where you're going to talk to your supporters. You're going to talk to your volunteers, your donors. You're going to talk to the converted. Twitter is where you're going to talk to influencers and especially the press. And you want your Twitter relationships with people to be reciprocal. So follow people. Engage like a normal person engages. And because again, it's about building a relationship before you need that relationship. So on Twitter, you can share quick links. Again, there's a character limit, so you're sort of limited in what you can do there. Facebook, you can be a little more long form. Twitter, you have to get to the point. Be active, but you don't have to live tweet everything. That's fine sometimes, but it shouldn't be the bulk of your content. Retweet and engage with people, especially when you're mentioned in a conversation that you think could be productive. Again, it's about building a relationship. And finally, if you're going to use a hashtag, make sure to check the hashtag before you use it to make sure that it hasn't been used for something else that you don't want to be associated with before. Again, you want to sort of connect all of these things. So as you're building out your digital plan and as you're thinking of promoting an article or you're promoting an event, think about what you're doing across each of these platforms. Oh, and one final thing. never buy followers. You will get caught and it won't be favorable. All right, so you should be collecting email addresses everywhere you go. Collect them at all of your events, pull them together from your personal contact list when you're first getting started. But again, collect them everywhere because you're going to need that list to communicate with people. Use your email list to keep your supporters updated. Make sure it's personal. You can actually talk like a real person here, and you don't want to sound too organizational or too formal. You want to make sure you diversify your asks. So don't always ask for money, but sort of diversify it with sign-on asks. That's ask people to sign a petition or do something else. Ask people to turn out to events. Chase call time with emails. But again, make sure you're giving people a mix of actions to take. Develop an email calendar. This is actually true across all of your digital platforms, but have a content calendar where you intentionally plan things. This will allow you to take advantage of all that the platforms can offer you in a more sort of intentional way. And finally, be sure to promote your events every time you have an event with a campaign email. It's about keeping people, your strongest supporters especially, looped into your campaign and what is going on.
Can I just add one thing
Sure.
here? You should assume that reporters will sign up for your email list. And so just be aware as you are sending things, you are putting it out into the world, and that's an open press thing. So, you know, make sure that as you're thinking about it, you think of, it's not as if when you send a press release, it can be covered, but an email can't. Mm-hmm. This is all going out into the world.
Yeah. A sort of couple of notes on something that you may already be watching in your own inboxes, but subject lines. So make sure your subject lines relate to the topic of the email. Ask yourself the question, would this subject make me want to click on this email, open this email, engage with this email, and then donate? So again, make sure it's relevant. Every campaign is different in terms of the volume that you're going to want to send to your email list. Early on, it might be as little as a few times a month or a few times a week, and it'll intensify. Really try to take advantage of moments, deadlines that are built into your campaign to fundraise off of. Think about your end-of-month fundraising deadlines, your end-of-quarter fundraising deadlines, and sort of build out an intentional plan for those, during which you intensify your email asks and use those moments to bring in as much money as you can. Try to capitalize on current events for your email program as well. So if there's a major development in your state, send an email on that topic. If there is a major development in the news, try to capitalize on that. Again, you want to make your emails as relevant as possible to the people reading them, which will help you sort of convert, again, whether it's donations or signups or what have you. And then finally, we will take some more questions.
Great. All right. We've had a ton of questions come in. This first one is for Ben. Ben, how do you message differently on different platforms to attract voters versus volunteers versus donors?
Well, I think it's important to remember that, again, with volunteers and with donors, you're speaking to the converted. So it's much more about sort of making sure they are as invested as possible in their campaign, and that they see how taking the action you're asking them to take will help achieve the goal, which is ultimately getting elected. With voters, it can be a little different. Again, it's either you are trying to turn out Democratic voters, or you're trying to persuade persuadable voters. But again, that's the sort of breakdown. Is it's going to be a little more issue based for those folks, as you try to give them a way to identify with you in your campaign and see a place for themselves in the narrative you're crafting about what you're going to do as an elected official.
Okay, great. This question is for Christina. Can you ever say when a reporter asks, or even a volunteer, I'm still analyzing the issue in response to a question?
It's a good question. Yes, if you in fact are still looking into something, then you should tell them I'm still looking into this. Be aware you can't say that for everything. At some point, you're expected to have a general sense of things and some general plans if you're running for office. But having not stepping into something, not just guessing. We've got a guy in the White House who seems to guess a lot, right? Or seems to just make things up. You as a candidate should be better than that. You should be willing to do the work and dive in. And if your answer is, I'm still looking into that, that's okay. Just be aware that you need to do that follow-up then and come back to them and tell them where you land. And be aware that if it's an issue that's top of mind, if you're running for the Board of Education and you're still looking at a major education issue, that could create a little blowback. But yes, absolutely. And particularly if they hit you with some very sort of small niche issue, to say, I really want to dive into that, but I need to spend a little more time with it. Let me come back to you, is an honest answer. Now, what I would do then is then take it more broad. If they've asked you about something very specific, about, let's say, education, but then broaden it out and say, but generally on the topic of K through 12 education or of charter schools or of whatever the topic is, and give a big picture answer, that's absolutely okay.
Great. For Ben, what do you think of the effectiveness of the fundraising ability now available on Facebook?
So I'll say a couple of things. Again, most of your money is going to come in from offline methods like call time or online methods like your email list, and you should certainly be using, again, a tool like ActBlue to collect those donations. The Facebook tool is actually challenging because it is, to my knowledge, only currently available to 501c3s, which are nonprofits. It hasn't been opened up to the campaign space. And I would assume that the reason there is that for campaigns, we have a whole series of compliance issues that differ state by state, differ whether you're a state and local candidate or a federal candidate. And so I would assume that that is why that tool hasn't been fully opened up to campaigns yet. Maybe it will be in the future. But again, there are tools that are built specifically for political campaigns like ActBlue that will help you sort of process your donations. And again, you are going to bring in the most money from people you know, from your local networks, from influencers who have a vested interest in your race. And so by and large, the ambient donations are going to come from a place where people have an existing relationship of some sort with you. And so you'll be bringing those in through intentional efforts rather than sort of drive-by or what we might call ambient efforts.
Okay, great. For Christina, how do I deal with questions based on old quotes that have been taken out of context?
You explain them. I think you explain how they're out of context. In an ideal world, the answer to all these questions is that it varies by the specific situation. But as a general rule, if you've been taken out of context and you know that, and you know there's something out there that someone's trying to use against you, you need to develop a pretty succinct answer, because no one's going to listen to a long-winded thing, that answers the question, and then your pivot out. So if it's giving a little more context, if it's explaining that your position has changed, if it's explaining why that frame or that question is misleading, that's all fine. You need to practice your answer, and then ideally practice into a pivot. But the best way to do it is have a succinct and to the point context and answer there.
And I think that really also brings up something that we've talked about in previous webinars and trainings, which is the importance of self-research and knowing what's out there about yourself. Yes. Do Google searches, do news searches, and particularly if you have a sort of public history and behind you, just make sure you know what's out there. Again, it's not so that you can be scared of your background. It's so that you are prepared to answer the questions that are naturally asked in the course of any campaign. One additional thing I might add there is to think about setting up a Google alert on your name. This is an alert you set up via Google. If you log into your Gmail account, you can set them up. And it will, every time there's a press hit that comes up with your name in it, it'll send you an email. And you can also do them as sort of a digest where it pulls several together. But that allows you to monitor your sort of media mentions in somewhat real time. And it's at least a good tool to sort of keep track of the basics.
And I think that's really important. I think a couple other just quick things there. Sometimes there's a quote out there that you have to respond to that's just not a great quote. Be willing as a candidate to either apologize or acknowledge a shift or acknowledge that you made a mistake and move on. That's something important as a candidate to understand how best to do that. And rather than keep trying to hem and haw your way around an answer, if the answer was just bad, say it was bad. Say you made a mistake and move on. And then, the other thing is to keep in mind, particularly when you do that Google alert, when you see something, I already mentioned not getting defensive, but also not giving something more oxygen than it needs. So if you're coming under attack and it's something that maybe some of your family or some of your voters have brought up, but it's not getting a ton of attention, don't give it more attention than it needs. So you have to make sure that you're moderating your response to the actual thing that you're responding to.
Got it. This question's for Ben. Ben, more and more people are recommending that I use Facebook Live to reach voters. What are some best practices to make the most of that?
Great. So yeah, Facebook Live is a great tool, especially for events. I generally would not recommend just sort of using it to live stream random events, but as part of an intentional plan to get your message out there, I think it can be a great tool. I generally recommend keeping Facebook Live broadcasts on the sort of short to medium length side. So I'm thinking in the, on the maximum in 25 or 30 minutes. You certainly don't want a 60-minute Facebook Live. I would say, one of the great advantages of it is that particularly if you broadcast via your campaign Facebook page, which you should, it will send out a push notification to your supporters, and that's a great way to tune people in. The thing I say about all of these tools that I think is so key is that Facebook Lives in particular give your supporters who may not be able to be in a specific place at a specific time the ability to participate in the campaign. And it all goes back to allowing people to see themselves in your effort and how they can help you be successful. And it gives, again, another method for people to participate. So again, keep the Facebook Lives on the short to medium side. Make sure you are using a good device like a decent cell phone or a tablet computer to do it. Make sure that you have good Wi-Fi signal wherever you are, because again, the value of it is people need to be able to see and hear you. And again, make sure that someone is placed, if you're, for instance, speaking, make sure that they're a thoughtful distance from the stage so that they're able to pick up the audio and pick up good video. But again, this is a great tool that you can take advantage of for intentional opportunities. Don't just use it to sort of, broadcast random happenings. But it's a good way to sometimes to also give people the ability to sort of see the inside of your campaign.
Got it. For Christina, do you have any recommendations or tips for how candidates can improve their public speaking skills?
Sure. One is practice, and practice in front of, we all have the friend who is willing to be honest with us, the friend who will tell us that no, that outfit is not your color. Find that friend, practice in front of that friend. Make sure they're not brutally honest, because you need to have some confidence. But one is making sure you're comfortable with your message. Deliver your message to as many audiences as possible. Get comfortable with it. Ideally, you're starting with your friends and family, and then you're working your way out. So you work out some of the kinks. But practicing is an important part. There's also a book, I believe it's called The Well-Spoken Woman by Chris Yonke. I recommend that. It's a really good book. Gives you some good tips and ways to present yourself. But number one, and this is the unfortunate thing, is you all have learned if you've already started campaigning or if you're looking into it, it's a lot of work, and it takes the practice that you're going to have to put that in.
Got it. For Ben, I have limited resources. Are there any recommendations you have for website creation to cut costs?
That's an interesting question. I would say this. I think that in the course of a campaign, you're going to have to raise money. It is a natural part of the way politics in our country works, for better or worse sometimes. And so make sure you're comfortable working to raise that money. And everyone out there, everyone can sort of do that. So I would say, first off, don't immediately write that off. There are some free creation tools out there like Wix.com that are great for creating free websites, or WordPress.com. The one thing I would say to you is that make sure that whatever platform you use, that you're able to do all of the things that you know you need to do for a political website. So make sure that you're able to put that donation button up top. Make sure that you're still putting your email sign-up form on your website. Again, the best practices still apply regardless of the platform you're using to build your website. And again, don't give up on fundraising from the start. You can do it.
Great. And our final question for tonight, again for Ben, what are some of the pros and cons of using Google or Facebook ads?
Well, here's what I'll say. So I think every campaign out there, because they're so inexpensive, should be doing a basic search ad buy on their name. It allows you to control your reputation. It allows you to pop up to the top of search results when people are searching for your name. You've probably seen search ads on Google without even knowing you were seeing them. Again, that's just a great have your bases covered method to engage in some low-level digital advertising. And deciding what other tactics that you should use as you go on, whether you're using Facebook ads or Twitter ads, whether you're using banner ads, it'll sort of be dictated by your budget, by the audiences you're talking to and how large they are, and which tool is best to reach them. I think everyone has sort of seen in the last few years the explosion of Facebook ads and particularly how effective they have been. And they can be very cost effective, and you can target a specific group of voters with them, or you can target in your district based on geography and demographics and all these other factors. So again, you can get very targeted with that. On the other hand, you need to really evaluate whether that is the best expenditure of the money given your budget and the resources that you bring to the table and what your ultimate political goal is, and sort of make a call based on that. And every campaign is sort of different.
Got it. Thanks, guys.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. We just wanted to run through some quick key takeaways. One, as we said earlier, every interaction, no matter who it's with, is an opportunity to share your message. Make sure you are delivering that message with every person you talk to. Two, earned media is a vital strategy to getting that message out. You need to be in control of it, which means you need to plan, you need to have a strategy, and you need to have a message, and then focus on how exactly you're delivering that.
And it's important when you build out your digital strategy to really focus on what we call the 3 M's: message, money, and mobilization. Each of those things can bring a lot to your campaign, and they also take some resources, again, people, time, or money. So think through all of these factors, write out a plan, make sure you have it written down so that you can hold yourself accountable, and make sure that someone is assigned to update your website and update your social media platforms and generate the content, because it's not going to get done on its own, and you need to be intentional about that.
We would like to say first, thank you to all of you. If you're putting your hand up to run, we are so grateful for you and for the work that you're doing to get yourself ready or to help build your campaign. We'd also like to say thank you to our partners, as you can see on screen: AFT, Act Blue, NEA, UFCW, and AFSCME. We're grateful for their support and for the work that they do every day.
And we want to make you aware of an exciting new resource that we just launched in the past couple of weeks here at Emily's List. It's the Emily's List Training Center, and you can visit it at trainingcenter.emilyslist.org. That's trainingcenter.emilyslist.org, and it is a platform that is designed to prepare pro-choice Democratic women to run for office. And we have lessons on everything from communications to fundraising to digital strategy and paid media and everything in between. And it's sort of bringing the 30-something odd years that we have in electing pro-choice Democratic women online. And there is a free section available. There's also a low-cost paid section for $9 a month that will help you get set up with all the tools you need to run for office and ultimately to win.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.